What if I told you that one of the most powerful books ever written takes place over just 3 days? A story so devastating yet beautiful that it's been banned, celebrated and studied for nearly a century. Today, we're diving deep into John Steinbeck's masterpiece of Mice and Men, and I guarantee that by the end of this video, you'll understand why this slim novel packs more emotional punch than books twice its size. If you've ever felt like an outsider, if you've ever chased a dream that seemed impossible, or if you've ever wondered what true friendship really means when everything is on the line, then this book speaks directly to your soul. Steinbeck didn't just write a story about two migrant workers during the Great Depression. He created a mirror that reflects the deepest truths about human nature, dreams, and the price we pay for companionship in a world that can be brutally lonely. This isn't your typical book summary. We're going to unpack the layers of meaning that make this novel absolutely unforgettable. From the opening pages that hook you with an unlikely friendship to the shocking finale that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about loyalty and sacrifice. We'll explore why this book has sparked more debates than almost any other American novel and discover the timeless lessons hidden within its pages. So grab your favourite drink, settle in and prepare to see Of Mice and Men through completely new eyes. Trust me, you'll never look at friendship, dreams or the human condition the same way again. Published in 1937, Of Mice and Men emerged from John Steinbeck's first-hand experience working alongside migrant labourers in California's Salinas Valley. This wasn't some ivory tower author imagining poverty and hardship. Steinbeck lived it, breathed it, and transformed those raw experiences into literary gold. The book's title comes from a Robert Burns poem that reminds us how the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry, setting the stage for a story where dreams collide with harsh reality. What makes this novel extraordinary isn't just its authentic portrayal of Depression-era America, but how Steinbeck compressed universal human experiences into a story that unfolds over just 3 days. He achieves something remarkable, creating characters so real and situations so emotionally charged that readers across generations continue to find themselves reflected in these pages. The book's controversial nature stems from its unflinching honesty about racism, mental disability, and violence in 1930s America. Steinbeck didn't sanitize his characters or their language. He presented them as they were, complete with their prejudices, fears, and desperate hopes. This authenticity has made the novel both celebrated and challenged, proving that truly powerful literature doesn't shy away from uncomfortable truths. The genius of Mice and Men lies in its deceptive simplicity. On the surface, it's a straightforward tale of two friends looking for work. Beneath that surface flows a river of profound themes about loneliness, the American dream, and what it means to be human when society treats you as disposable. Steinbeck crafted every scene with precision, every conversation with purpose, creating a story that hits like a freight train despite its brevity. The story follows George Milton and Lennie Small, two migrant workers bound together by circumstance and genuine care during the Great Depression. George is small, sharp-witted, and burdened with protecting Lennie, a gentle giant whose mental disability makes him vulnerable in a world that shows no mercy to the different or weak. They drift from ranch to ranch, chasing work and clinging to a shared dream of owning a small farm where they can live off of the land. Their latest stop brings them to a ranch in the Salinas Valley, where they encounter a cast of characters as lonely and desperate as themselves. There's Candy, the aging ranch hand terrified of being cast aside when he's no longer useful. Crooks, the black stable hand isolated by racial prejudice. Curly's wife, trapped in a loveless marriage and hungry for attention. Each character represents a different face of loneliness and broken dreams in depression. Era America. The ranch becomes a powder keg of tensions and misunderstandings. Curly, the boss's aggressive son, immediately targets the gentle Lennie, sensing vulnerability. Meanwhile, his unnamed wife seeks connection wherever she can find it, a dangerous game in a world where women have few options and less protection. The other workers watch these dynamics unfold, knowing that trouble is inevitable but powerless to prevent it, as George and Lennie share their dream of owning a farm with Candy. Hope briefly flickers to life. For a moment, their impossible dream seems within reach. But Steinbeck masterfully builds tension toward a climax that will test every relationship and shatter every illusion. The story hurtles toward a conclusion that is both shocking and inevitable, forcing readers to confront difficult questions about loyalty, mercy, and the price of protection. The opening scene establishes the central relationship that drives the entire narrative. George and Lennie camp by a peaceful river, and through their conversation we learn they're fleeing trouble in their previous town. Lennie's fascination with soft things led to an incident with a girl's dress, forcing them to run. This pattern of Lennie's innocent actions causing serious problems creates the underlying tension that will explode later. George's protective instincts and Lennie's childlike dependence are immediately clear, as is their shared dream of owning a rabbit farm where Lennie can tend to the animals he loves. Their arrival at the ranch introduces a world of broken men struggling to survive. The boss questions why George speaks for Lennie, suspicious of any arrangement that doesn't involve pure self-interest. This interrogation reveals how unusual genuine friendship is in their world. Curly's immediate hostility toward Lennie establishes him as the primary antagonist, a small man who compensates for his insecurity by bullying those he perceives as weak. The ranch hand's warnings about Curly and his wife create an atmosphere of impending disaster. The introduction of Curly's wife adds another layer of complexity and danger. She appears in the bunkhouse looking for her husband, but her real purpose is connection with other human beings. The men's discomfort around her reflects the social constraints of the era, where a married woman's interactions with other men could be misinterpreted with deadly consequences. Her loneliness mirrors that of the men, but her position as the boss's daughter-in-law makes her untouchable and therefore more dangerous. Lennie's encounter with Curly in the bunkhouse demonstrates both his gentleness and his terrifying strength. When Curly attacks him, Lennie initially refuses to fight back, following George's instructions to avoid trouble. But when George finally tells him to defend himself, Lennie crushes Curly's hand with devastating ease. This scene foreshadows the tragedy to come, while showing how Lennie's strength combined with his inability to understand social situations makes him a walking catastrophe. The revelation of Candy's savings transforms George and Lennie's dream from impossible fantasy to potential reality. When Candy offers to contribute his money to their farm plan, the dream suddenly becomes tangible. This moment represents the emotional peak of the novel, as three lonely men glimpse a possible escape from their harsh existence. Even the cynical Crooks briefly allows himself to believe in the possibility of belonging somewhere. But Steinbeck uses this hope to make the eventual crash more devastating. The climactic scene in the barn brings together all the novel's themes in a perfect storm of tragedy. Lennie accidentally kills Curly's wife while trying to quiet her screams, repeating the pattern of his strength overwhelming his good intentions. Her death isn't malicious but inevitable, the result of two lonely people seeking connection in a world that offers none safely. The scene is both heartbreaking and terrifying, showing how quickly circumstances can spiral beyond control. The formation of the lynch mob reveals the ugly underbelly of the ranch's social dynamics. Curly's thirst for revenge, combined with the other men's fear and prejudice, creates a mob mentality that demands blood. Only Slim understands the true nature of what happened, but even he cannot stop the machinery of violence once it begins. The contrast between the mob's brutality and Lennie's innocence highlights the novel's central tension between civilization and savagery. The final confrontation between George and Lennie at the river brings the story full circle. George's decision to kill Lennie himself, rather than let him fall into the hands of the mob, represents the ultimate act of friendship and protection. As he retells their shared dream one final time, George grants Lennie a peaceful death filled with hope, rather than a violent end filled with terror. This scene forces readers to grapple with impossible moral questions about mercy, sacrifice, and the nature of true friendship. The power of genuine friendship in hostile circumstances stands as the novel's most profound lesson. George and Lennie's relationship transcends mere convenience or mutual benefit. Despite the burden Lennie represents, George chooses loyalty over self-interest repeatedly. Their bond provides meaning and identity in a world that treats migrant workers as interchangeable parts. This teaches us that authentic connections require sacrifice, and that true friendship means accepting responsibility for another person's well-being even when it complicates our own lives. Dreams serve as both salvation and curse throughout the narrative. The farm dream gives George and Lennie purpose and hope, distinguishing them from other workers who live only for the next paycheck. However, the dream also sets them up for devastating disappointment. Steinbeck shows us that dreams can provide the motivation to endure hardship, but they can also blind us to reality and make failure more painful. The key is holding dreams lightly enough to survive their destruction. Social isolation emerges as a universal condition, affecting every character. Even those who appear to have company exist in fundamental loneliness. Curly's wife, despite being married, craves genuine human connection. Crooks faces racial isolation that cuts him off from the white workers. Candy fears the isolation of old age and uselessness. This pervasive loneliness reveals that human beings are fundamentally social creatures who suffer deeply when cut off from meaningful relationships. The vulnerability of the powerless in society receives unflinching examination. Lennie's mental disability, Crooks's race, Candy's age, and Curly's wife's gender all make them targets in a world that preys on weakness. Steinbeck demonstrates how society's most vulnerable members bear the brunt of economic hardship and social prejudice. This remains tragically relevant today, reminding us to protect those who cannot protect themselves. The American dream's accessibility comes under harsh scrutiny. The farm dream represents the classic American promise of upward mobility through hard work and determination. However, Steinbeck shows how systemic barriers prevent most people from achieving this dream. The economic realities of the Depression make the dream impossible for working-class characters, no matter how hard they work or how much they sacrifice. Violence as both protection and destruction runs throughout the story. George's final act of violence against Lennie represents mercy and protection, while Curly's violence stems from insecurity and hatred. The novel forces us to grapple with when violence might be justified and when it becomes destructive. This moral complexity challenges simple notions of right and wrong. The responsibility that comes with power and knowledge creates moral dilemmas for every character. George's intelligence makes him responsible for Lennie's actions. Slim's natural leadership makes him responsible for maintaining order. Even Curly's wife's position gives her power over the workers while making her responsible for the consequences of her actions. The novel suggests that with greater capacity comes greater moral obligation. Society's treatment of difference and disability reveals uncomfortable truths about human nature. Lennie's condition makes him both beloved and feared, showing how society simultaneously patronizes and persecutes those who don't fit standard molds. The other characters' reactions to Lennie reflect their own insecurities and prejudices, demonstrating how fear of difference often drives discrimination. The price of survival in harsh circumstances forces characters to make impossible choices. Every character must decide between self-preservation and helping others, between hope and practical acceptance, between fighting and submission. These choices reveal character, while illustrating how extreme circumstances can force good people to make morally questionable decisions. Economic desperation shapes every relationship and decision in the novel. The characters' actions are driven by the need for work, money, and basic survival. This economic pressure creates competition between natural allies and makes genuine friendship both more precious and more difficult to maintain. The novel shows how poverty corrupts relationships and limits human potential. Of Mice and Men endures because it captures timeless truths about human nature wrapped in a specific historical moment. Steinbeck's masterpiece reminds us that the fundamental human needs for connection, purpose, and dignity transcend economic systems and historical periods. The novel's power lies not in its plot, but in its profound understanding of what it means to be human in an often inhuman world. The story's tragic ending doesn't negate the beauty of George and Lennie's friendship or the hope their dream provided. Instead, it forces us to confront the gap between human aspirations and social realities. The novel suggests that while individual dreams may fail, the capacity for love, sacrifice, and connection represents humanity's greatest strength. Even in failure, George and Lennie's relationship stands as a testament to the power of caring for another person. Perhaps most importantly, the novel challenges us to examine our own society's treatment of the vulnerable and different. The prejudices and fears that destroyed Lennie still exist today in new forms. The economic pressures that trapped the ranch workers continue to affect millions. By understanding these patterns, we can work to create a world where friendship and dreams have a better chance of survival. Steinbeck created more than a story about Depression-era farm workers. He crafted a mirror that reflects our deepest fears and highest aspirations. Of Mice and Men remains essential reading because it reminds us that in a world that often seems designed to crush the human spirit, our capacity for love and sacrifice represents our greatest hope for redemption.